Hey folks, so as promised, here's a wee video just trying to answer a couple of the questions I've had sent through over the last week or so. I'm just going to briefly touch on the little bits of kit that I would carry and some of the clothing that I might wear when I'm heading out onto the trails, onto the local trails during the winter months and colder weather. This isn't meant to be some kind of sort of safety video or anything like that, although you will notice some of the bits and pieces I touch on are safety related, but I will post a few links to other resources that can go a little bit more in depth into keeping yourself and others safe while you're out and about. This is purely just what I find useful or feel comfortable carrying and wearing when I'm out and about. So let's get into it. The first consideration I would have when planning on heading out would be what's going on my feet. My nice comfy summer trail running shoes have been sat at the back of my wardrobe now for a little while, and I've been spending a lot of my time in the more aggressively gripped shoes that you might find on fell runners and orienteers. So the main difference between these shoes and your standard trail running shoe is the grip. I'm not sure if you can make that out there, but these have got quite an aggressive tread on them, with lugs anywhere between sort of 4, 6 or even up to 8 millimeters in depth. And that really gives you an advantage over other shoes when we're in snowy, slushy conditions. Perhaps not great on sheet ice. I'll touch briefly on these in a little while, and other things that you might want to consider if you're finding the conditions quite icy rather than snowy. With my shoes as well, I tend to stay away from Gore-Tex. That was one of the questions that was sent in to me, was whether my footwear is waterproof. Personally, I don't find Gore-Tex shoes do keep my feet dry. The material might be waterproof, but you'll often get water ingress at the top of the shoe, or it might soak down through the socks. So my feet always, always ended up a little bit wet when using Gore-Tex shoes. I find waterproof socks much more efficient at keeping water out. So if you are looking to try and keep your feet dry, consider using something like that. I find these really good at keeping my feet dry and warm in the winter, so that's what I would go for. Moving on to the pack itself, I've got a little 5 litre Salomon race vest. Okay, all of this stuff will easily fit in there. It's important you practice packing your pack actually, so that you can you've got a good awareness of where little bits and pieces might be. You don't want to have to go digging around in your pack trying to find things. And just having a couple of practices, a couple of dry runs at home will really make the difference if you need to get into it while you're out and about. Okay, so the first thing I usually throw into my pack is my waterproofs. Okay, I've got a fully waterproof, breathable running jacket here. So this got taped seams, it's got waterproof zips, and it's got a really good hood on that as well. I think it's important to make sure that your jacket is waterproof rather than water resistant, okay? The last thing you want to do is have to turn and head for home because you're getting wet and your jacket's just not quite up to the job. I'll also carry waterproof trousers, and not everybody would choose to put those into their vest, but if the conditions turn quite nasty and I don't want to go home, then I'm quite happy to throw on a pair of run-specific waterproof trousers. Again, very breathable, very lightweight, and for how much space these take up in my pack, I wouldn't normally be without them. Okay, I'd rather have them available, throw on the trousers, and be able to carry on my merry way. Okay, moving on from the waterproofs, I've then got a few items of spare kit. Okay, so I do say this is spare kit. It's not something that I would wear and then put into my bag. This would be packed away and only really used if the conditions deteriorated and I needed some more insulation, or if I got some of the things that I was wearing did get wet, or I needed to stop, go static for a while, and really think about wrapping up warm. So firstly, I've got two snoods here, or buffs you might know them as. I'll usually carry two. They're quite useful. You can wear them obviously around the neck as they were designed. You can turn them into hats. I've even turned these into gloves as well by wrapping them around the wrist and then pulling some of the fabric over the hand. Really useful piece of kit to carry with you. I've also got a spare hat. This one will be a little bit warmer than the hat that I might start running in. This particular one's also wind stopper material, as well as having a nice fleece lining. And I've got two spare pairs of gloves here. The first one would be my insulated, or really, quite thick, heavily insulated gloves. And I've got a thin waterproof over glove. You've probably noticed that these are mitts as opposed to the fingered gloves, and I choose these purely because I find that they keep the hands a lot warmer than a standard glove. The reason I'll carry a separate waterproof over glove as well is I could just throw these on with my nice thin running gloves. I could wear them just with bare skin if it's not particularly cold, but the air's quite damp. We've got maybe some showers. And it just gives me a little bit more, a few more options, if you like, on how to layer up. The thermal gloves as well are really breathable, which is quite important. You can find that your hands will overheat and get quite sweaty. We don't want the gloves themselves to get damp from sweat, because then you start losing some of that all important body heat. Okay. One of the other things I'll carry, which not a lot of people might do this, but I like to have sunglasses with me. Snow laying over the ground and a bright blue sky can be fairly dazzling, so the sunglasses come in useful for that, but also in poor conditions. So if we've got some driving snow, hail, or even rain and sleet, popping on a pair of wraparound sunglasses can give you some good protection for the eyes. Just beats having to squint or run with the head down and try and keep your eyes clear of that bad weather. Finally, we're looking at the snacks and water that I might carry, usually just a half litre of water. As I mentioned, I'm staying quite local, runs around about 60-70 minutes. Anything longer than that and I might take a little bit more water with me, but usually that half litre will do me. And I'll carry a couple of snacks. One of them might be a gel or a wee chocolate bar that I'll keep pretty close to hand, and then something else a bit more substantial that I'll stash away amongst my emergency supplies, if you like. And that again is if I do need to go static, to stay in one place for whatever reason, I've got some fuel that I can get on board to help me out. So that kind of brings us on to this little bundle of kit I've got here. I'm going to pop these to one side just now. These things here really are just for emergency use only, perhaps with the exception of the tissues. They're handy at any time. So I've got a wee first aid kit there, just a personal first aid kit. In that I might carry my preferred painkillers. I've got allergy relief tablets. I've got things like Imodium and Zantac for upset stomach or indigestion. I've got a wee lip balm. Probably the most important thing for me in there is something like Compeed blister pads, okay? If I feel that the shoes are starting to rub anywhere or I'm getting some sort of hot spots, I'd rather stop and treat those before they get any worse and put an end to my running. Moving on, I've got a wee emergency light. So again, this isn't something that I would ever plan to use whilst running. But if you do find yourself suddenly out in low light, you're out on your run a little bit longer than you planned, or in some sort of darker terrain, deep woods, this can come in really handy just to give you that little bit of extra light to find foot placement and safely get yourself out of that area. Yeah, you might need to come down to a walk rather than a run, but that can come in really useful. I always carry a small compass in my pack. Again, this is something that just sits in one of these pouches along with the emergency light, and I never really take it out. Not everybody would carry one of these, particularly if you're not sure when would be the correct time to use it or how to use it. But for me, again, it's just something that I always got in my pack. And then the final thing would be this emergency bivy bag. So You might have noticed there was a foil blanket in my first aid kit, and to be honest, I really just used that to give my first aid kit a little bit of shape. I would very rarely plan to utilise that blanket when I've got something like this. So big difference between the blanket and a bag. This will offer you a lot more protection from the environment. It'll keep you a lot warmer, drier, keeps the wind and the drafts out, and yeah, as I say, gives you a lot more protection than a blanket would. For the size and weight of that, I'll always carry it around. It wouldn't take much to to cause you to have to stay in one place for any length of time. And if that's the case, I would get straight into this and try and preserve body heat. Whether it be a twisted ankle or something along those lines that mean you've got to wait for help to arrive, then that is essential. Okay, so we've covered the spare clothing, waterproofs, footwear, food, things like that. Lastly, I just want to talk about these wee contraptions. These are known as Yatrax. Okay, that's the brand name. And basically what it is, it's a rubberized or silicone frame that goes around the shoe, and then on the underside of the frame you've got these coiled wires, and they're designed to give you more grip in icy conditions as opposed to snow, sleet or slushy conditions. Okay, great bit of kit, really do improve your grip in these slightly icier conditions. They're maybe not as useful in sheet ice conditions, okay, but if I found that that's what I was running on, then it's probably time to turn around and try and find a different route. Or if you know the conditions are going to be that bad before you head out, then I'd be considering a different pair of trainers, something like a winter specific running shoe or an orienteering shoe that has the metal studs permanently fixed into the sole. They would give you a lot more grip on proper hard packed ice when compared to the Yatrax. But these generally can get you out of a bind if you need to. So yeah. Okay, folks, I'm going to pack this lot away into my wee vest just to show you that it does all fit in there. When I'm packing, there's two things I want to consider. One is is my spare clothing going to be waterproof? So things like the gloves, I'll roll the insulated gloves inside the waterproof gloves, so that'll keep those dry. The hat and the buff will get put into something like a small Ziploc freezer bag, and then my waterproofs will just be rolled up so that the outside of those garments are exposed to the weather rather than the inside. So I'll pack this lot away and then I'll briefly talk about the clothing I have. Okay, so there it is, all that kit's packed into that little 5 litre race vest. Like I've said before, folks, have a wee practice at packing your vest and get familiar with the places that you're putting all your little bits and pieces so you can access them quickly when you need to. With these kind of race vests as well, it is important to make sure you put some of your kit in the front. They need a little bit of weight in the front of the vest just to keep them balanced. If you pop everything into the rear of it, you'll find it starts sitting low and sliding up on the chest, which can be quite uncomfortable. So I'll have my water and a snack on one side here, and then the other side of this, although it's designed to take another water bottle if needs be, but I'll usually pop something like my mobile phone in there, along with perhaps the buff. If I'm not wearing it, it'll go in there. And if I need to take off my gloves for whatever reason, I've got somewhere to stash those little bits and pieces while I don't need to wear them. Again, I can't emphasize how important it is to make sure you've got a mobile phone with you, folks. It really can be a lifesaver if you get yourself into any tricky situations, whether it's to something as simple as calling friends and family to let them know that you need a lift, or you're getting a bit tired, you can't run as far as you thought you'd planned to, or if you need to call the emergency services to get out the rescue services, mountain rescue teams, anything like that. Your mobile phone is absolutely essential. Really useful apps you can have on there as well that'll help exploring things like your OS Maps, Land Ranger, things like that. You know, they can be used as navigation aids, not to replace your traditional maps, but certainly have a use and a time and place. Okay, so there's my pack. We've briefly talked about footwear, so I just want to run you through what I would wear out on the trails at this time of year. Okay, so I'd always start with a base layer. My personal preference is merino wool. I would go short sleeve. Okay, primarily, this is designed just to keep my core warm, okay, the main torso. They're fitted, so they're quite close to the skin, which helps with the insulation, but I tend to stay away from too much compression wear just now. I find the compression wear, with it being quite tight fitted, isn't quite as warm as something like this. Merino is a great fabric. It's soft against the skin. If you get the brands that are seamless construction, there's very little chance of this chafing. It's great when it's wet. It dries pretty quickly. It tends not to smell like some of the synthetic materials do. And even when it is a bit damp, it retains some of its insulation properties. So you're less likely to get a bit of a chill from your own sort of perspiration. On top of that, I would usually choose a long sleeve sort of mid layer, and this is a little bit thicker than the likes of a summer long sleeve running shirt, if you like. It's got a nice brushed fleece fabric on the inside, quite wind resistant as well. This particular brand, Raidlight, have got a winter trail series of clothing, which is really useful. I like to have a zip on the front of any garment as well, so I can control my body heat. And one of the added bonuses from this particular top is these wee mitts that are integrated into the end of the sleeve. So if you're running along and find the hands are getting a little bit chilly, you can just pop the mitt over and it gives you a little bit of extra insulation around the hands. Yeah, nice little bit of kit. Any kind of mid-layer technical bit of clothing would do. Even something like this by Salomon is nice for running in winter conditions. I'll occasionally run in shorts, but 99.9% of the time I'll be wearing a full length running tight. As well as being a little bit warmer than the shorts, I find that these can give the legs a lot of protection from the harsher winter conditions, whether that's driving wind, rain, snow, or even if you're trudging through deeper snow, if you get that kind of hard crust on the top of the snow, it can be quite abrasive and cut into the shins, and this will just give you that little bit of protection. So I would generally always choose a long, full length running tight. And then the last couple of bits and pieces I've got here would be the buff that I'm going to wear, so that's in addition to my two spares. I like to wear a nice thin running hat, okay, so this again is merino wool, and the reason I would go for something this thin, twofold. I've got a nice thick insulated hat in my pack there, but a thin hat like this fits really well underneath a running cap, and I like to run in a cap even in winter. It's a little bit of extra insulation, but primarily it's for the peak to keep snow, wind, rain and sunlight from the eyes. Last little bit of kit, of course, your running gloves. This is just a regular pair of Ron Hill running gloves. Nice fleecy material to keep the hands warm, very breathable. These have got the added bonus of a little stowaway mitt that you can pull over your fingers just for a little bit of extra insulation if you need it. Great to keep the wind and things like that out. And that, folks, is pretty much all I would use. This literally stays packed as it is just now. And I just grab the vest, throw it on and head out of the doors. As I said, it is just for local trails, probably around about 60, maybe up to 90 minutes, but certainly no longer than that. On a safety point, we've already spoke about the mobile phone. You know, that's something that I'll always take out all year. And the other thing we really need to be doing is just letting people know where we are going, okay, when we're expected back. But like I say, I'll post some links into the video just to give you some direction on where you can go for other safety information. So I hope that's helped some of you. I hope it's answered the questions that got sent in to me. If anybody wants to get in touch with any more questions about what I've spoke about today, please feel free. I'm a bit of a kit geek when it comes to things like this, so I'm always happy to talk about it and discuss it. But yeah, hope that's helped, and hopefully I'll see you out on those trails pretty soon. Take care.